Today we are going to be making these vegan caramel Carob chocolate candy bars, and I promise you are going to love them so much. Of course, there is a mukbang at the end where I taste test them for you. There are 3 steps to making this candy bar. First, we will be making this chewy caramel, then we will make the cookie portion, and lastly, we will be making the Carob chocolate. I wanted to make something like a Twix bar, and that's what inspired this recipe, so let's get started. The chewy caramel is first. So you're going to need a medium-sized pot, and you are going to fill it with 2 cups of coconut sugar. I have so many candy recipes now after making this that I can't wait for you guys to try. Next up, you are going to need 1 cup of coconut cream. I used the full fat for this one. You could try the low fat, but it could alter the recipe, so I would stick to the full fat. When it comes to caramel and candy making, you need the measurements to be accurate and the temperature to be accurate, so I wouldn't alter any of that. Next, you are going to need your candy thermometer because we will need to be checking the temperature as this cooks. But before I put that in, we are going to turn the heat on to medium-high, and we are going to let this sugar melt down in the coconut cream. This should only take a few minutes. I like to keep stirring to make sure that all of the sugar is completely melted down. I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but once it is completely mixed, it should look like a dark brown syrup, a thick syrup, I should say. After this mixes all together, you'll notice that it'll start to bubble up and boil. And when you see it start to do that, this is when you can add your candy thermometer. So you're going to want to keep a close eye on this. It is going to continue to boil. And while it does so, to make sure that it cooks evenly, you're going to want to make sure you continue to stir it up. This way you make sure that the heat evenly distributes throughout the mixture. So you will continue to stir this until it gets to around 200 degrees. This is going to give us that chewy, caramelly texture that we want. And if you aren't new to making candy, you'll know that the typical softball stage to making candy with other sugars is around 240 degrees. But for some reason with these 2 ingredients, that is way too high for this, and it goes into the hard crack stage. And don't get me wrong, it tastes amazing, but I don't want the hard candy right now. That's going to be for another recipe. So we're starting to get a little bit closer to the texture that we want. If you don't have a candy thermometer, you could use this method, which is like the cold water method, where you put some of the mixture into the cold water, and if it hardens up like the soft, chewy caramel that we want, then you are at the right stage and you can turn off the heat. But as you can see here, it still stays really soft, so we need to cook it a little bit longer. And then we will test it one more time when it's at the 200-degree mark to make sure that it's the right texture. You'll also notice a difference in the consistency when you lift up some of it with a spoon. It gets much more thicker than it was in the beginning when it was much more thinner. It's hit the 200-degree mark. So I am going to test the ice water trick with you guys that don't have a thermometer one more time so you can see the difference. So I place some in some ice cold water, and I'm going to fill it with my hands to see if it disintegrates or if it stays in the softball texture that I'm looking for. And I tested 2 of them out. You see how it stays like really soft still? So this is exactly what we want. So you can turn off the heat and remove your thermometer. You don't want to overcook this mixture because, like I said, it can go into the hard crack stage, which is where your soft, chewy caramel will turn into a hard candy. So next we are going to add in our vanilla. I add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla bean powder, or you can use 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and you want to keep stirring to make sure that the mixture continues to cool down. It's also optional to add a little bit of sea salt to this. I don't care for any in mine, but now we are going to move this mixture onto some parchment paper. Mine is lined in a small glass pan that I am going to allow it to cool on. Once it is not steaming hot, I am going to place it in the freezer. Don't worry about how it looks as it cools because we are going to be remolding this later. And then next up, we can get started on the cookie base. I tried to make this cookie bar as close to the Twix bar as possible, so you are going to start off with 1 cup of gluten-free oat flour and 1 cup of almond flour in a large bowl, and then you are also going to add a 1/2 cup of coconut sugar. Then you will be adding 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla powder, and then you are going to mix this all up. If you don't have vanilla powder and you want to use vanilla extract, wait until you add the wet ingredients to add the vanilla extract. And then from here, you will be adding 1/2 cup of coconut milk to the dry mixture. From here, I switch to a wooden spoon and I start mixing all of the ingredients. And you're going to continue to mix this until the dough turns into basically a cookie dough. You don't want it to be too sticky and you don't want it to be too dry. If you see that your batter is a little bit too wet, go ahead and add a little bit more of the oat flour. I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but you'll see me adding some oat flour in here to make sure that I am able to roll this cookie dough out. So make sure to keep some extra oat flour on hand for that reason, and also for while we are rolling out the dough. Once it starts to look a lot more like cookie dough and isn't as sticky, you can get your parchment paper ready. Feel free to use a clean flat surface like tile counters. If you have those, just make sure that you put some extra oat flour on top because you don't want it to stick. I prefer to use the parchment paper for this recipe, so I made sure to lay that out, and then I pour some of the oat flour on top of it, and then we are going to pour the cookie dough out on top of the parchment paper. From here, you'll see that I am basically rolling it around and making sure that each side is coated with the oat flour so that it doesn't stick, and this will make it easy for us to cut it and shape it into the cookie bars that we need. As you can see here, I'm really working with the dough. I want to make sure that there is no sticky portions of the cookie dough. So I even add a little bit more of the oat flour as well a few times to make sure that it's not sticking as I continue to fold it. And you will continue to do that until the dough no longer sticks to your hands. It's one of those things that you'll start to feel when it's ready. And here is where I start to get to that point. You'll see because I start to flatten it out and start to shape in it. You can follow my lead on how I shape this up. I'm going to create a rectangle. And I'm going to be very honest, I'm not too good with measuring how thick these are. I kind of just eyeball them. And then you want to use any type of straight edge to help you make sure that the edges and corners are nice and straight. Feel free to use a knife if you'd like. What you're going to be eyeballing is how long you want your candy bars to be, and then also how thick you want them to be. I just estimated what a large candy bar looks like to me, and then I cut them to that size. And I'll speed this up, but I did that all the way through for the rest of the cookie dough. And then you are going to place these on some parchment paper in a large pan. Here is a close-up of what I'm working with, the size and the thickness and the shape. And half of these I actually decided to split them in half to make them into smaller candy bars. So you'll see me do that here, and you want to make sure you give them enough space from each other because you don't want them to stick together while they are baking. And then after that, we are going to poke them with a fork throughout the cookie. Just at the top, you don't want to go too deep. As you can see, I just start at the top and work my way through the bottom, or vice versa. This will help them cook thoroughly in the oven, and then we are ready to place them in the oven. We will be cooking these in a 400-degree oven for 25 minutes until they are golden brown. So they should look a little something like this. If not, cook them a little bit longer and make sure you check on them. And our last step, the carob chocolate. So I typically try to stay away from oils as much as I could when cooking in all my recipes, but this one I haven't found a replacement for yet, but that's okay. You will be using 1 cup of melted coconut oil, and then you are going to mix in 1 cup of this premium carob powder. Now you're going to add this slowly into the coconut oil because if you add it all at once, it can get really clumpy. So make sure you stir it up nicely with a whisk and slowly add the powder in. A few tips I can give you is make sure you get the refined coconut oil so that your carob chocolate doesn't taste like coconut. And for those of you that are new to carob, it is not chocolate, meaning it does not come from the cocoa plant. It is actually derived from pods that come from the carob tree, and it tastes really similar to chocolate. It's just a lot sweeter. There are some subtle differences if you're like a chocolate snob or a chocolate connoisseur, but most people that I give it to actually can't tell that there's no cocoa in it. Next up, we are going to add some powdered coconut sugar. All I did was blend up the coconut sugar to make it powdered. And you are going to be adding 10 tablespoons of this to this mixture. As we did with the carob powder, we are going to do the same with the powdered sugar, adding little bits at a time while we constantly stir it. Another tip I wanted to give you is do not substitute this sugar with maple syrup. I love using maple syrup in my recipes, and quite frankly, it would seem that it would work a lot easier in this one, but for some reason it clumps up every time. So make sure you go with the coconut powdered sugar on this one. As you can see, the texture has gotten a lot thicker. And feel free to taste it to make sure it's as sweet as you like it. Next up, we are going to add some vanilla bean powder, a half a teaspoon. For some reason, when I was mixing that up, it got deleted, but I'm going to add a little bit more coconut oil to this because I want it to be a little bit more looser in texture. This is going to make it easy for us to dip the cookies in. If you like it really thick, that is no problem. Just know that when you're dipping the candy bars into this mixture, it will continue to thicken more as the coconut oil hardens. And it may just make it a little bit harder when you are trying to coat all of the candy bar. I'd say I added about a half a cup more of the coconut oil to my mixture. And then if you do as I did, make sure that you taste it because you still want it to be a good sweetness to your liking. And that's why I added some more sugar here and mixed it up. Now the goal is to make this chocolate as smooth as you can get it, so make sure all of the clumps are gone. I guess you could use an emulsifier if you'd like, but I just mixed it and this is the texture that you want. Next, you are going to take your chewy caramel out of the fridge or the freezer. If it's frozen, let it thaw out for a few minutes. You don't want it to be too soft right now, but you also don't want it to be too hard. So I'm going to roll it out in between two pieces of parchment paper. And here I'm just rolling it out thin enough to where I can actually cut it and lay it on top of the cookie bar. You can see the texture here, it's pretty pliable. So I'm going to take this top layer of the parchment paper off and we can get to cutting. And as you can see, there is no perfect way to do this. I'm literally using my eyeballs and measuring it out on how thick I think that the caramel needs to be in order for me to lay it on top. And if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. You'll be able to mold the caramel to the cookie. As you can see here, I'm just cutting it to the length that I think this candy bar will be. And I just lay it on top of it. And because the caramel is so soft at this point, you can basically mold it to the cookie, just like you see me doing here. And you're basically gonna do this for the rest of the cookies. Once you lay the caramel on top of the cookie, you're gonna place it back on the parchment paper in the pan. Because we will be refrigerating these just to make them a little extra cold to make the carob chocolate dipping process go by much easier and faster. So with this example, I had cut some of the end of the caramel off and I just put it to the side. We can rework that later. It's almost like dealing with a really thick cookie dough where all of the excess pieces can be put back into a ball and used later. But if I'm being honest, you'll probably eat it. It tastes like caramel chews. And for this one, I am doing a large candy bar, so I'm using the same method, cutting it and then laying it over the cookie. So I'm going to speed up the rest of this process up for you guys because that's basically what I do over and over. And just remember, if you eyeballed it wrong or you messed up somehow on the caramel cutting, you can always roll it back up in the parchment paper and roll it out flat again. It's pretty hard to mess this up. There's so many ways that you can fix your mistakes. I know I didn't show yet a close-up of how thick this caramel looks from a side view, so here's a little side view of the cookie with the caramel on top. You don't want the caramel to be too thin because, just from personal experience, it tastes much better with a thick piece of caramel on there. Believe me, I have made these a few times, so there is a lot of trial and error just so that I can make sure that I got these down right. And so now you'll see this is the leftover caramel that I have left, and my boyfriend grabbed some. But I just roll it up back in the parchment paper and put it back in the fridge. And after that, this is what your end result for your cookies should look like. How beautiful is that? And we're not even done yet. We are going to place these in the freezer for at least 20 minutes. You want them to be nice and cold for the dipping in the chocolate. Again, make sure that these are not touching because if they are, they will stick together. And once they are nice and cold and at least 20 minutes have passed, we are ready to dip them. So I did an experiment with these on camera and I dipped some just once and then I dipped others 2 times. And guess which ones tasted better? Yep, the ones that are dipped twice. So I recommend all of you guys dip yours 2 times. So what you're going to do is make sure the candy bar is fully coated in the chocolate. So that means you can turn it around with a fork or whatever utensil you're using and make sure it is fully coated. Then from there, you are going to place it on some parchment paper. the same one that you had from earlier. How amazing does this look? And you're going to do this for all of the rest of the candy bars. Again, I am going to speed some of this up for you guys because you get the hint. I just couldn't get over how beautiful they look, especially as I'm placing them on the parchment paper and as they dry. Some of them even had some really cool marbling effect with color. I don't know how that happened, but it looked really cool and you'll be able to see it at the end. And so after dipping all of them one time, I'm going to go in and dip some of them for a second time. And because we put these in the freezer beforehand, you see how they all cooled already. And so as I'm dipping them the second time, they cool really fast. And we are done, you guys. These are all finished. As you can tell, they dry up really quick and you can see the different textures and little lines of marble in them. Like I said, I don't know how that happened, but they look so beautiful. So I can't wait for you guys to make these and share them with your family and friends. I definitely outdid myself on this recipe. I can't believe I was able to figure out this caramel. It is absolutely divine. Make sure you subscribe because I have so many more videos coming up for you guys. I had to take a bite to show you a texture shot, but oh my gosh, we tore these up. Next up is a mukbang of me eating them. Okay, you guys, so I made these candy bars yesterday, last night. We're gonna try them today. So I made these last night and I did some like camera pictures and stuff of them, but I want to give you guys the mukbang version. Kyrie is asleep again. It's the best time for me to film, so yeah, let's just kind of get into it. So I want to show you guys, so I had made some that were like short like this, right? And I double dipped a few of them, so they've been sitting in the fridge because it is a coconut chocolate, so therefore it can melt pretty fast. So basically here they are. Here's one of the candy bars. Let me show you guys another one. Oh, look at that, you guys. Ooh. Can you believe I made candy bars? Like, whoa, that was loud. This is the ice machine. But look how good these came out, you guys. What the heck? Okay. So, okay. So what I was gonna say is, for this recipe, obviously if you watched the video, you saw how I made them. So it's basically a cookie with the soft, chewy caramel dipped in chocolate. I will say, since I tried them last night, the ones that are dipped double chocolate are better. And the ones that have a little bit more of a thick layer of the caramel, they're so good. So yeah, since they've been kind of thawing out a little bit, because I did have them in the fridge, the caramel probably was like a little bit harder. But let's see here, like you guys are gonna watch me break apart one of them. I just love this part, like this is my favorite part. And then I'll taste them for you guys. Okay. Oh shit, it's kind of hard. Oh man, yeah, it's still kind of cold. But let's see. Oh, see, I'll show you right here. Okay, so do you see? I swear, I think the caramel is my favorite part. I mean, the whole thing altogether is amazing. But the caramel is just so, and you guys, it took me a few times to figure out how to get this texture of the caramel. So typically caramel is made with like dairy, right? Like butter and sugar. But of course, like I'm not using no butter. But I realized that coconut milk and coconut cream really mimic that creaminess and won't give off that like coconut flavor as long as it's cooked long enough. Like, it's all broken and stuff into pieces and it's starting to melt in my fingers. But here's another piece. Oops, a piece fell. Wow. This is like my second time making these. And I just can't believe I really outdid myself with this recipe. I really love Twix, right? So that's what inspired this recipe, is Twix. Because it has the cookie, the caramel, and the chocolate all around the actual candy bar. And the reason why I just always, like, they're super nostalgic for me also. Like, growing up in junior high, they used to sell them by the stick, like just one stick at a time. And I used to get them all chocolatey and melted. I don't know why I like them like that. These ones are basically like melting in my hands as well. Here's the inside. That was the little one. I'm debating if I should cut one open for you guys. So even though I thought of this recipe, a Twix inspired this recipe, I should say, it doesn't taste like Twix. It kind of just gives candy bar vibes. My boyfriend thinks it tastes better than Twix. He thinks this is the best dessert I've ever made. So, and he has like a huge sweet tooth. Okay, I'm gonna try breaking the other one, and then I want to cut it. That's what I'm gonna do really quick. Okay, so I'm gonna cut one, and then so you guys can see kind of like what it looks like on the inside. Oh, I don't want to make too much noise. Wake up, Kyrie. Okay, here it goes. So you see how there's the cookie and then the caramel. Look how smooth that caramel is, and then the chocolate. But like I said, the bigger candy bars, they weren't dipped. I didn't double dip them, but when you make yours, definitely double dip. It just gives more of a chocolate flavor. But you can also like slice these in like little pieces if you want to like serve them as like little appetizer treats. Hello. Oh, but I wanted to break another one. But anyways, I'll eat this one while I'm talking to you guys. I'm over here eating hella candy bars at night for the mukbang. What's crazy is I don't even normally usually have a sweet tooth like I used to back in the days because I eat so much fruit, but these are amazing. Now these take a little bit of time to make, just because it's a process of like the three things. I guess it's not that long, but for me it kind of took a while because I was trying to figure out this caramel recipe, you guys. Oh my gosh, because it's made with coconut sugar. The coconut sugar melting point and like where it gets to, for all you bakers and scientists out there, you know that sugar, when it gets to the melting point of like, or I should say the temperature of 240 degrees, it should go to the softball stage to where it becomes chewy. not the coconut sugar one. For some reason, once it passes a little over like 220 degrees Fahrenheit, it goes to the like hard crack stage. So I kept having like candy of toffee, which I can't wait to make for you guys too, because so many other recipes now that I know how to make the caramel, like just wait, I'm gonna have another one coming soon. Because I got a few more candy recipes coming up for you guys to try. And then, as I promised, like I definitely want to do a lot more raw recipes since summer's coming up. And a lot of people on here also may have been struggling with TSW, so I got chocolate on my fingers. And yesterday my son, he was eating all the leftovers in the bowl. He loved it so much. But yeah, guys, I think that's all I'm gonna eat for now. I'm gonna save these for later because I have like 3 more left and I kind of want to eat a little bit at a time. But I just wanted to share with you guys how they are live in the flesh on camera. Yes, I eat them. Yes, they're amazing. If you haven't made any recipe on my channel yet by now, this one right here, you're gonna love it. All right, you guys, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.